Staff ready? Good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Planning Commission tonight. It is 5:30. Ruth, could we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Zarguni,
Present.
Commissioner Miller isn't here yet.
Just walked in.
Okay. Commissioner Miller. Here. Commissioner York.
Here.
Commissioner Mendel.
Here.
Commissioner Salazar Garza.
Here.
Commissioner Munoz.
Here.
Commissioner Motahi.
Here.
We have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. If anyone would like to speak regarding any public comment regarding the Planning Commission. None, I will close the public comment and moving on to approval of the absences for Commissioner Mendel and Salazar Garza.
I move we approve the absences of Commissioner Mandel and Commissioner Salazar Garza.
I'll second
that.
We have a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to approval of the minutes regarding the regular meetings for January 25th, 2023. Any discussions or a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as presented.
A
second. We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to consent public hearing discussion item A and B.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mark Orozco, Planner, City of Corpus. I'm going to be reading into record consent public hearing items A and B, starting off with the plats. We have item number 2, Flower Bluff Park. This is a conditional approval plat. Flower Bluff Park, Block 11, Lot 18R. It's a replat of 0.5 acres. Next one on the item is Kingsley Heights. This is a Phase 1 and 2 preliminary plat. This is accompanied with the final plat of Kingsley Heights for Phase 1, final plat of 25.11 acres. Item number 5, Del Mar South Campus, Block 1, Lot 2, final plat of 6.867 acres. Now, item number 6, Suntide Industrial Tracks, Block 3, Lots 1AR, 1BR, and 2R. This is a replat of 4.587 acres. Number 7 is a conditional plat for White Cap Master Prelim plat of 241.84 acres. All plats have met the Texas Local Government Code and the UDC regulations. Staff recommends approval on these items. I'm going to continue with the public hearing item B, new zoning on consent. The first one of the rezoning is for Christopher Powell. This is located at or near 3965 Calicote Road. It is a rezoning from the RS6 Single Family 6 District to the RS6 with a special permit. Next item on the agenda is number 9, rezoning for Miran and Sepende Vatanka. This is at or near 12102 Leopard Street. This is a rezoning from the RS6 Single Family 6 District to the General Commercial 2 Commercial District. Staff recommends approval on these two rezoning items. You have any questions for staff?
Thank you. Commissioner York?
Yeah, what are the conditions on the White Cap preliminary? It says conditional.
The main condition was what was it, Bria? The lift station? They had individual lift stations on there, so it needed to be approved by the Public Works Department.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Any other question for staff? None. At this time, I'd like to open the public comments regarding the item for the consent agenda. Anyone would like to speak regarding item 229? None. I will close the public comments, and entertain discussions or a motion?
Make a motion, we approve items 2 through 9 as presented.
I second.
We have a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to public hearing, item number C. Item number 10.
Number 10 is a plat with a variance waiver. It is Carmelite Home Tract, Block 1, Lots 1R, 2, 3, 4, 5, a replat of 6.18 acres. And the variance is for that same tract for sidewalk and off-road multi-use trail connection. And so those are items 10 and 11, and Bria will be presenting
Together.
on this item, yes.
Okay, thank you.
See, there it is. Get this up. Good evening, Bria Whitmire, engineer with Development Services. Here's the presentation for the waiver request for both the sidewalk and the off-road multi-use trail combined. So to get familiar with the property, this is the proposed plat. This is the old Carmelite old folks home at Alameda and Everhart. They have it set up in 5 different lots there, and you'll see a little bit more detail with their existing plans here shortly. So this is just an overall shot to kind of give you a bearing of where we're looking at. Going into the sidewalks first is where I've highlighted green all existing sidewalks in the area. You can see that along this subject property on the east side, there is nothing there at this time, but there are connecting sidewalks in the nearby area. There's also, this is next to the HEB, there's shopping, there's some restaurants. Pretty busy commercial node here at the intersection. There are some more sidewalks going further out, just kind of stuck to what would be tied into this stretch. This is a picture of the existing conditions along Alameda. There's a little stub out of a sidewalk, but it was never completed there along Everhart. This is a shot looking in the opposite direction. It's kind of a beaten path. You can tell that the folks in the neighborhoods regularly go up and down this section of Everhart. When we look at the mobility plan, so this is the off-road multi-use trail. This is to go along the drainage ditch from Carmel Parkway all the way through. Of course, for this property, this would only be for their stretch. At this time, there's nothing that they would connect to on either side of them along that drainage ditch. But that is from the mobility CC plan, and that, I know it's kind of hard to see on this aerial, so the next slide is a little bit clearer of a picture where you can see the entire plan network of this area. And this is a picture of the existing conditions on that along that drainage ditch on Carmel Parkway. So it's a bit of a deeper ditch on that side. Of course, it gets deeper as you go farther up towards the park off of Santa Fe. So typical plat requirements. Of course, the sidewalks and mobility plan should be constructed at the time of platting. The plat waiver to be approved should be considering these conditions. The one I'd like to point out is the public health, safety, and general welfare, since we are talking about a sidewalk where there isn't one presently there. So factors in support of the waiver. Per the waiver request letter, the applicant is stating that the drainage ditch along Everhart is a hardship to put in a sidewalk. And they're also stating that the off-road multi-use trail is not connecting to anything on either side. Factors against this waiver is there is as the picture showed, a beaten path along this portion of Everhart that is showing a need for sidewalk in this area. There is the physical danger of pedestrians walking along this stretch. That sidewalk will increase connectivity around the businesses of the area. There are 2 RTA stops in the proximity along Alameda. Again, we've already talked about the H-E-B, the restaurants, the banks. There's quite a few businesses in this area attracting that foot traffic. And lastly, the mobility plan, as I was trying to show, it's got to start somewhere. There's nothing in that vicinity. That's not to say that where do you start that at? Some additional information is that there is a set of approved public improvement plans from July of last year that already includes sidewalk. This ties into that piece of stubbed out sidewalk off of Alameda and stays on the property side of that area along Everhart that has some drainage infrastructure. They stayed closer to the building. This is the one lot that has planned development at this time, which is a stripes on closest to that corner in Lot 3. So with that, the staff recommends disapproval of the waiver from the sidewalk construction. We feel that we really need that sidewalk along that stretch of Everhart. However, we do recommend approval of the waiver from the off-road multi-use trail. It won't connect to anything in the near-time future, and there is already connectivity along Carmel Parkway to get to the park off of Santa Fe. And that is it.
Thank you. Commissioner York.
Thank you. And Bria, I appreciate you getting back to me when I reached out for some information on this item earlier in the week. Just a comment, because I got some information from staff right before the meeting started. I wanted to see if the piece of Everhart adjacent to this property was on the Public Works. They have a 5-year interactive map showing if they have any planned improvements on streets. And they do have on Everhart south of Alameda, but not adjacent to this property, which means the city's not planning, at least within the next 5 years, to redo the street or construct anything where they could potentially construct sidewalks. So wanted to share that. And then my question is, staff's recommending denial of the sidewalk waiver, and the information I got from Bria helped kind of support that, because a lot of times when we have drainage ditch adjacent to a road, we do grant a sidewalk waiver. In this case, there's actually curb and gutter and inlets along the road, and there's underground storm infrastructure basically underneath that swale, so the swale doesn't really need to be there, it appears. My question is, with these public improvement plans, if this waiver is denied and they have to build the public sidewalk, would they be building it in the right-of-way like it's traditionally done?
For the section of that we have the approved public improvements package on, these were submitted only for the development that's at the corner. They designed this such that they built it within their property. However, for the plat requirement, this sidewalk is going all the way up to the corner of that triangular portion. I'll switch to the plat. So even though in this overall picture, they're only developing this part, and we have that approved sidewalk for here, this stretch along here, we're just stating that it needs to be sidewalk. As you pointed out, there's some drainage infrastructure there. There's some swells from the previous use of the property that directed water a certain way. Depending on the development that's planned for up there at this time, they don't have any plans for the development, at least that's currently. But the plat requirement is for sidewalk for this entire stretch. So I'm not sure if they would propose to continue as they have done at the corner and stay on their property, or if they would like to, as you say, fix up that ditch and it doesn't need to be there, and change the way that their drainage system is working for that entire property. That has not been presented to us as far as options. So
typically staff requires, or the city requires, the sidewalk to be built in the right-of-way. Would Would staff allow that? And then if so, I assume they would have to add a pedestrian access easement to their plat.
Yeah, typically we would request an access easement, and that could be, like, for example, if they wanted to defer it for future development through a deferment agreement, we would, require that written instrument eventually if it's not done by plat.
Is that
Could
a
be by
decision that
separate-
would be made?
It could be by separate instrument, in other words.
Okay. Is that a decision that would be made with staff? If their waiver got denied, would they just have to work that out with staff, how and or where they build the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question for staff? Commissioner Mendez.
Understand correctly that they could defer the construction of the rest of that sidewalk outside of the property that's being developed until a later time?
We do have deferment agreements. However, we do require a financial security with the deferment agreement and approved plans, so many people just decide to go ahead and install the sidewalk.
Like a down payment, basically? Oh, 110%, so in full. Okay. And would they be required, there's a few manholes, wastewater and stormwater, that are in the swale. Would they be required to relocate those, or is that something that they would have to dodge, or is a city requirement? What happens with those manholes?
It wouldn't be a requirement to relocate them as a standalone requirement. If they're changing the flow of the water through the property, there might be a need to do so, but that would be based on their reorganization of their drainage system throughout the site. If we do a access of some sort, there is room to continue the currently approved sidewalk on that corner. If they just continue that on, there would be no need to modify any of that. It would only be if they wanted to move it closer to the road, then they might need to, and they might already have, whenever they develop these other lots, there might be a need to do more drainage anyway, because the previous use of that area was kind of an open sidewalk concept. So if there is going to be more pavement, they might have to actually add rather than just relocate.
Thank you.
The other thing I'd like to throw out there while we're talking about deferment is along the letter that requested these waivers for the sidewalk and the mobility and the multi-use trail, it also included a request for the water line that is also supposed to go along Everhart. That has already been asked to be a deferment. So right now, for the lot that they have plans for, they can get water from Alameda. But since there's no other development going on, they're asking to defer the plat requirement of water along Everhart until future development. So we already have a deferment. That's a much bigger concern with the fire rather than service taps, because there is some water on the east side of Everhart that they could potentially tap onto. It's rather small. They'd have to see what the use is, if they have enough capacity there. But we already have a deferment situation with the water. I want to point that out.
You good, Commissioner? Commissioner Salazar Garza.
You pretty much answered my question, but I was just wanting to know, this deferred agreement, was this something that was introduced to the developer and explained that this is another option that they can take?
I don't know what conversations we've had, but they requested deferment for the water, so I'm assuming they're familiar with our deferment agreements. But, we can certainly, we have staff members that are, dedicated to our contracts, and they would sit down with the applicant and provide the information. But essentially, we do require a plan set and a cost estimate in relation to the agreement, and the financial security can either be cash or a letter of credit.
Mm-hmm.
And the deferment agreements typically run a year, but they can be extended beyond that if necessary.
Okay. I just was curious to know, because this is an option that the developer can consider on, this situation that we're facing.
And this is,
Yes.
it was part of the memo, but the letter that, where they are asking, we would like to defer so as I was saying, it's already mentioned, so from them.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes, Bree, could you illustrate on the plat where the hiking bike trail would be located?
Sure.
I guess just
This
along
one's
the
right
ditch.
here. Yes, it follows this, this red line is really following the ditch along Carmel Parkway. It goes all the way along. Right now, there's nothing there. See if I have a better.
And connectivity to the park is through the sidewalk on the other side of the road in front of the homes?
For the park off of Santa Fe, is the one yes, this is just green space. So they're actually taking Carmel Parkway. There is a sidewalk on the house side of Carmel, and they're taking that. They would still have to cross the street to get into the park. This little stretch of the connectivity is where that's where the drainage ditch really does get fairly deep. That's where it would be a little bit more tricky. They'd have to do some serious work in that area to make that connectivity safe and not just be a little roller coaster. Really,
I think that'd be cool.
it would be fun, but it's slightly dangerous. Back to the public health part, but yes, this connectivity would be the trick, and also it is outside this current plat. So this stretch, there's no plans for that in the near future. We talked to Parks again today to see if there is any discussion of that, and there currently is not.
You talked to the Parks Department, or did you talk to anybody from the PrAC board?
Parks Department.
Yeah,
That's who I talked to. And
that's one of the
the
things that there's been a breakdown over the years between the PrAC board, not, the recommendations from the PrAC board
Okay.
going to the Parks Department and it kind of falling on deaf ears. And the reason why I bring it up is I sit on the Bayside Area Development Plan committee, and one of the only things that lit up that committee was connecting the two commercial nodes from what is going to be this development to, call it Parkdale Plaza. And, that was one of the things that really got everybody excited in that committee. So, I'd really like to see this be the first step at making that a reality,
Nice.
because it was definitely something that got everybody excited.
Nice. That's good to hear. I was not aware of that.
But that's just my comments and questions.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner York?
Yeah, you may have just answered it, but what was staff's reasoning for recommending approval of the waiver on the multi-use? Was it just the ditch?
Yeah, for south of Everhart, that Carmel Parkway, you have the palm trees. It's kind of existing use. You see people out there with their dogs. There's not, and in talking with Parks, there doesn't sound like there's a plan in motion to put in the multi-use on either side of it. So then on the north side, as we were just talking a bit about, it's a pretty deep,
Right.
there where that drainage comes through. That park isn't getting any major renovations at this time.
Okay,
That was the reasoning.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Miller, you have a question? Okay. Any other question for staff at this time? None. I would like to open the public comments regarding item number 11. If anyone would like to speak regarding this item. 10 and 11. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening. I'm James Poole. I'm a representative of the applicant, Vaquero Ventures. Our address is 2627 Tiller Street, Fort Worth, Texas, 76107. Appreciate y'all's time and consideration, this evening. So we've got a couple items in front of you, the plat and some waivers. Site is located at Everhart and Alameda, familiar with it. I've got a couple items here. I don't know if you mind passing these out to them. Just a couple packets. We have one of these for each of them.
Oh, sure.
So this is just help illustrate what I'm talking through. So we purchased a portion of an overall larger tract. What you'll see here in just a minute, I'm just outlining the ownership to kind of help paint the picture. So the main item that obviously they're recommending disapproval is the sidewalk along Everhart. And so we're asking for a waiver from that for several reasons. One, we don't own all of the property that is fronting it and would be required. The others, we're only proposing starting construction on the Stripes project here in the immediate future. I'll hold off a second.
So I guess y'all will and then get back to us.
Yeah, we good? Okay. So the only project that we have permitted now that we're ready to go start on is the Stripes at the corner. So we're not trying to get out of building sidewalks. We're all for building the sidewalks. That's not the issue. It's just the way this right-of-way is with the ditch and the swale, the drainage channel that runs through there, it's not feasible for us to go in there and put it in today. So that's why we've pushed it into our lot internally, and it's going to extend through the full Stripes lot on this initial phase of the project. And we have no problem with the next portion of our property that we develop, we include that in there. And I think there's other mechanisms. The deferment that was referenced with the letter of credit, I don't know that that's a route that we're talking about, but more of, there's other ways that we could, I'm sure, handle that. I mean, the C of O is one, right? I mean, we've put the sidewalk on our plans, so we have to put it on the ground to get our C of O at the end of the day, right? There could be other mechanisms. I'm just saying that's one of the things. And then also, when you look at this on paper, it looks pretty straightforward. It's not that big a deal. But when you go look at it in person, in the field, that's a pretty significant dip in there. There's nowhere that's flat enough today to go install it. So we'd have to do significant dirt work, importing dirt, grading, all that would impact the capacity of that channel. The channel does provide drainage capacity today. There is, like Mr. York mentioned, underground in that same area, but that also does have a surface drainage capacity as well. There's surface inlets within the middle of the ditch. If you flip to second to last page, kind of give you an idea. It doesn't do great justice on the slope there, but that bottom picture you can see that that's catching water within the surface there, not just on the street.
Is that just providing flow underneath that approach, or is it actually draining in?
That's today as it sits.
Correct, but
Yeah.
is that draining, is that just providing drainage underneath that approach? No, there's storm pipe.
Yeah. So it catches and then dumps into the storm pipe below.
Is this approach going to be incorporated into the design of improvements?
I'm not 100% sure right now. Yeah, it should be. Yeah, more so just point that out to show that it does serve a purpose today, the ditch. And the infrastructure that's underneath the ditch is significant. I mean, it's 5x5 box culverts. It's not a 24-inch pipe that's easy to move. Yeah, it's pretty significant. So we're proposing this as an alternate that would hopefully, bigger picture, make sense and satisfy the requirement. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. But that was really our thought process behind it. Again, I'm not against following the code. We always want to do it. There's a section in the code that allows for the waiver for this very reason, for situations where it's not feasible. I mean, it specifically says when you abut a drainage ditch. So,
Commissioner, do you have any question for the applicant? Commissioner
Yeah,
Munoz?
question for staff. So are there any other mechanisms for a deferral besides a true deferral? I mean, he mentioned the C of, tying into the C of O, or is there any other mechanisms that we know about that could accomplish that?
Well, again, the point of the deferment agreement is that they can plat, they can record their plat, but we do require the financial security. So no, we didn't, I mean, sidewalks is an improvement, and we would want the financial guarantee, and so that's why we have the agreement in place.
And I'd like to add a little bit more, if I can, about the infrastructure there. So that is, as was stated, it ties into several other pieces in that area. There's inlets along Alameda, there's items along Everhart, it's all tied in. That's not to say that if this ditch is the only purpose of that infrastructure being there, it's connecting other features. It's not only for this area. They added those two inlets to help with the drainage of this site.
I've got a question on that
Sure.
from when I emailed staff. Normally, when we're in this situation, I think the other commissioners know from experience, when there's a roadside ditch, I'm usually the first one to say, give them the sidewalk waiver. But in this case, it's a little different because it appears like the ditch doesn't need to be there. And I want to see if you could confirm, what I understood from your response in the email was that while the underground infrastructure there is draining upstream properties, the ditch, the surface ditch or swale is not actually draining anything other than that site. Is that
site.
correct?
Correct.
So filling it in wouldn't change anything?
As
It
long
wouldn't
as,
disrupt any drainage?
no,
Okay,
not for anybody else other than, as you said, that site. It's-
right.
it's
Okay,
tied to that
just
area.
wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak regarding this item?
I have one more question for the applicant.
Yes, sir. Sure.
You mentioned that, something about that you are just the owner or you're the purchaser of just one piece,
the piece that's outlined in red, yes, sir.
and I guess the person that, it's not my business, but, I guess whoever you're buying the property from is going to require you to install the full sidewalk all the way down?
That, we haven't had that full conversation there yet. That we would have to.
Technically, they're both on the hook.
Right.
From what I
But from this standpoint, yeah, I would have to, yeah. If we don't get the waiver granted, we would be responsible for building it up.
Yes, from what I've understand, so when this plat first came in to be processed, it was one owner for all of the sites. I'll actually go to this screen here. This was all one ownership, and then this top piece, I believe, was the first to be sold to a separate person, and then this bottom half was all one owner. And now, since that happened, now I understand that this was purchased this specifically. So the plat was already submitted as one owner, and then now it's been cutting up all over the place.
And just to clarify though, because I looked at the plat, on the cover it lists multiple owners. The platting requirements would be the responsibility of all of those owners, right? So they all share that responsibility.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I think they might be working on an answer as well.
Right, so according to the application, the deed shows it's all entirely owned by the Ed Rochelle Foundation. So there shouldn't have been any sales since you're selling by meets and bounds, which our code doesn't allow. And so I'm sure hoping nothing was sold because it's all deeded to Ed Rochelle under the application.
Well, assuming it is, then the plat would have to be updated to reflect the current ownership, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other question for the applicant? None. At this time, I'd like to close the public comments and entertain further discussion. Does anyone have any question for the staff or?
I'm prepared to make a motion, but did you have questions?
I just have some comments.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just a question. If we approve the plat, do we need to make any comment about potentially them having to update ownership, or will that work itself out before recordation?
That's an excellent point. At the time of recordation, if the ownership has changed, they may be looking at several plats now having to be broken apart for each, or every owner is going to have to sign. It's one or the other.
But it just changes the cover page, right? I mean, they just add some more ownership blocks on there?
I don't think it's going to be that simple. I wish it was that simple. What ends up happening is that land was sold by meets and bounds, which that's the first issue. Second issue, you're now then dealing with several individual plats that will have to come in since it's no longer under one ownership. If that's occurred after the fact, that's not a good thing.
So should we just approve it and then let it work out later?
I would say that's going to come up with the signatures.
Okay.
So ERF may no longer be authorized. If they sold by meets and bounds, they no longer can sign for properties they don't own.
But I know I've seen plats with multiple owners before, where they platted multiple lots with different ownership.
Yes, all the owners came in. So in those situations, the owners got together at the time of application and said, we have 1, 2, and 3 owners for a combination of lots, and they've come together, formed a coalition, and applied for a plat. When you do it after the fact, that party that originally owned no longer has the right to sign
Right.
off on those other lots. That's the
So
problem.
you'll have to get the deeds and the documents showing everybody has authority and all that.
I don't think it's going to be that simple, but yet there's a bit of work to go if that has transpired. I hope
Okay.
it hasn't.
But back to the main question, is there a reason we shouldn't approve the plat as presented?
At the time of application, all the boxes are checked.
Okay.
What has happened after the fact, that's a separate issue.
Okay.
Commissioner Miller?
Back to the waivers. I live in this area, and I can tell you from experience that when you're driving to the west or southwest down Everhart during certain times of the day in the afternoon, the sun hits you in the face really hard, and there's a lot of people that walk this this road, and there's a lot of traffic, unfortunately, for the people on Junior Terrace and everywhere else, because a lot of people prefer to use this as a cut through to Santa Fe, and so a sidewalk there would be a welcome addition to the development for sure. And then that coupled with my comments about the desires of the Parks and Recreation Board to create a hike and bike trail and connectivity between these two commercial nodes being a high priority of the Bayside Area Development Plan, I'm inclined to disapprove the waiver for the bike trail as well. But have you opened it up for motions? Okay.
Any other question for staff, comments, before we entertain a motion? At this time, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve items 10 and 11 as presented, which means approving the multi-use waiver, hike and bike trail waiver, and disapproving the sidewalk waiver, and approving the plat.
So we have a motion based on staff recommendation, correct?
Correct.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Opposed.
Ruth, for the record, could you just call roll, please? this one?
Yes. So item number 10 and 11, we have a motion by Commissioner York. The roll call vote. Chairman Zarguni,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Miller,
Nay.
Chairman York, excuse me, Commissioner York,
Aye.
Commissioner Mandel,
Nay.
Commissioner Salazar Garza,
Aye.
Commissioner Munoz,
Aye.
Commissioner Motahi.
Nay.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 ayes and 3 nays. So the
Motion carries?
passes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to Director report.
I have no report for this evening.
Thank you. Any future agenda items? None. We are adjourned. Thank you.